so official when it does that. So welcome to the learning community. This is our provider panel. This will be our 6th-part series for this learning community. Excited to have all of you with us today. Excited to hear from experienced providers across the state. When you registered, we asked you to submit questions, and also we asked the CCR&R program engagement specialists who work closely with emerging providers to give us some different questions that they think people might want to know. So we have tons of questions that we will kind of round robin with you all. But first, let me bring up a presentation and we'll go through just a couple slides, and then I'll kick it over to our presenters today. Okay. All right, so we will share. Okay, so quickly, can you see my screen? Because that's the important question. Okay, great. So you are welcome to pose any questions. You can put your name, county, and maybe even the type of child care center or home you would like to open or a part of, and just to let us know a little bit about your background. And keep yourself muted if you could. We'll have, I think, some time at the end for some Q&A, but of course, add any questions throughout this conversation. You can use the reactions. You can clap your hands or raise your hand as well with the Zoom tools. So we want this to be interactive as much as possible. There's tons that we can learn from our providers today, though. So kind of went through this. Of course, use the chat box if you have any issues. You know, let us know. So introductions, we have Little Steps Early Learning Center. We have Melissa Rogers here. We also have Jennifer Palmer at the Growing Garden Learning Center. All of these folks are directors. And then Natalie McGuire is also a director at a ministry called Helen Lieber Early Learning Academy. And these folks were brought to us from relationships that they have with the CCR&R program engagement specialists that are deeply embedded in your communities across the state. So I want to just shout out to you for connecting me to these providers. And I've already learned a ton just from quick conversations that I've had with them prior to today. Okay, so without further ado, I will stop sharing my screen and also admit a few more folks, and I will kick it over to you. So I would love to start the conversation off with maybe proper introductions, so we could round robin, maybe starting with Natalie. If you could talk a little bit about your experience, you know, about your ministry, and then maybe some motivations that you have when you do this work, and then maybe lastly, like what keeps you up at night around this work. Of course, there might be a lot of other things, but.
Hi, I'm Natalie Mcintyre. I'm the director at Helen Lieber Early Learning Academy in Hartford City. We originally were a half-day preschool, and they were a half-day preschool for almost 60 years. We transitioned to an all-day childcare in 2018. And we had help from Tracy Marshall, who's on here, and Carrie Higgins was my CCR&R at the time, and we transitioned to the full day. And right now we serve 27 children, and we're blessed every single day. What motivated us to change was the fact that we felt the community needed more childcare, so we are open 6 to 6 for that reason. And we are pretty full, although the summertime has dropped, but I have a waiting list and it's ready to start back up in August. The other motivation is the fact that I love kids, and I have always wanted to work with kids, and took a stint after working in childcare when my kids were little. I worked at a bank for 19 years and kind of fell into this position here back at the church. So what keeps me up at night? Usually all the stuff I know I have to get done the next day, or worried about, am I going to have any call-ins the next day? So, but that's me in a nutshell and the program.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Natalie. Thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
Melissa, would you like to go next?
Okay, there we go. I'm Melissa Rogers. I am, I'm actually not the director at Little Steps, but I'm the owner. So I have I'm here all the time. But I opened an in-home childcare in 2015, and all the way to 2020, I had that. I had a second one for, I think it was two. I think I opened the second in 2018, and then in 2020 we opened the center. What can I tell? We have 7 classrooms. I have about 15 or 16 teachers or floaters, we have roughly 80 children when the school agers are here in the summer. Throughout the rest of the year, we don't have school age. We don't have buses, but we have infants to pre-K. So we have about 77, around 70. The things that motivate me are obviously the children. We're all here for the children. That's what made me get into the field, were the children. Now that we are helping so many families in the community, that is one of the biggest, that's one of the best things about it. Like Natalie said, there's definitely a need everywhere you go. There's a big need for childcare, and it's just, that's pretty much it. That's the whole reason for it. We want families to feel comfortable leaving their children. That's the most important thing to them. So what keeps me up at night? Probably, I would say, probably staff. That is rough. We have a great group, but hiring more people is rough right now. But it's a hurdle that you get past, and it's worth it. So, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa.
Mm-hmm.
And Jen?
I am Jen Palmer. I am the owner and the director of the Growing Garden Learning Center. I started 10 years ago with an in-home program that served 12 kids, and I was the Growing Garden childcare back then. I said that I would have a childcare center within 10 years, and just shy of 2 months of that, I opened up a center in Mooresville. We're licensed for up to 70 kids. We have infants all the way through pre-K. I don't have a before and after school program, which is the community desperately needs. So I'm in the process of looking for a second building that we can expand to for that. We chose Mooresville because there was a need there that was not being met. So we are actually the only licensed center inside Mooresville. We are the only past the quality. We just hit we didn't in February. We hit level 2 past the quality. We have to be open for 1 year, so I can't do level 3 until November. But we will be level 3, and I'm working on national accreditation now, so we can hit level 4 pretty quickly as well. But yeah, so we are the only level 2 past the quality, and that's pretty low still on the levels there. The motivation is like both Melissa and Natalie have said, is for the kids. In my in-home, I experienced a lot of kids that were getting shuffled around because providers didn't want to work with them. I've had a lot of autistic children, a lot of behavioral issues. And even though we're told not to do it, I'm finding that childcare places still are expelling those kids and kicking them out. And the statistics for a child that gets kicked out in pre-K is not good for those guys. And so we have a lot of behaviorals in the center as well. Mooresville didn't take kids that weren't potty trained. So a lot of kids didn't have any type of schooling in Mooresville until they were potty trained, and then they could go to like a church preschool at that point. So we got a lot of younger kids that haven't been in it. And I'm going to say the exact same thing with Melissa and Natalie. The thing that keeps me up at night is the staffing. Man, staffing is a struggle. you need to have a plan in place for that staffing. I have older kids that work for me, and I had a good base of my teachers. If I didn't have that, that would have been definitely, that it would have made it rougher. But even getting support staff at this point is a little on the rough side. We got to do better at changing the look of childcare, getting our hourly rates up so we can attract that that other level of professionalism.
Yes, absolutely. I know we hear that across the board from our CCRNRs that are helping families try to find care, and it's there might be seats available, but staff that can't fill those roles and take care of those kiddos. So knowing that all three of you have staffing as something that keeps you up at night, let's jump to some questions around staffing. So what are some of your marketing strategies to recruit staff? Jen, do you want to take us off?
What we have done is we are pushing Teach. We are reaching out to our local colleges that have the early childhood education. We have reached out to Indiana AEYC, the Teach program through them. The first thing I did when I opened is I had Lindsay Philpott and Tori Brinson come in from Indiana AEYC through their Teach program to talk about getting our teachers their CDA or associate's degree or bachelor's degree, because that Teach program will pay 90% of their college education. And then you pay the other 5% to get into a place that you can work and come out debt-free in college. That's not offered much anywhere else. So we push that big time. The younger group, and then like I said, the local colleges, Ivy Tech, IWU, which is actually in Marion, but that's all online. And Ben Davis High School around us. Two of the local high schools have a program for their seniors. You can't get them until they turn 18, but at least laying the groundwork there. We've really been pushing that, and then we just bumped our hourly rates up, and we're looking at some other funding ideas for that, but trying to get that, you get a different type of personnel when you bump up $3 or $4. So that's what we've been pushing, and mainly on Facebook has been our best.
Okay. Melissa, what about you? Are there other marketing strategies that you all use?
Facebook is great. We use Facebook a lot. I get a ton of applications on Facebook. We use hiring, what is it called? I just forgot. Better Team. Better Team is a good one. I get quite a few good ones from there. It's just a matter of, you call people and then sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. And, but yeah, that's Facebook. Really, word of mouth is great. And, a lot of people who are in this field have been in this field for a while. And so it kind of seems like we kind of all know each other, in your community. So it's nice to, if you take care of your employees, then they will spread the word that, hey, this is a good place to work, that's really important. Obviously you want to take care of them anyways, but it does help. And I've even gone as far as to give teachers a bonus, if they find someone and they last 90 days, you can do that too. What else? I don't know. We don't have a lot of turnaround, so that's great. I don't have to hire a ton, but every once in a while, there's the need, and it is rough. We're actually looking for a pre-K teacher right now, so that's something. We have a couple interviews, but like I said, it's up in the air if they show up or not. So, but I found that if at least one person who works here knows them, it usually works out. So word of mouth is great. Yeah.
Great. And Natalie, do you have anything to add?
Not really. I use everything that they used. I just hired 2 parents. When they're awesome. So And that's another avenue as well.
Yeah,
But yeah,
No,
we're
that's great.
trying to push the teach to get them in the door and keep them here as well.
that's excellent. So great to hear that there's not a lot of turnover from some of you, but so when you let someone go or someone resigns, how do you handle that exit? What does that process look like for you? Melissa, do you want to start us off?
So when I let someone go, are you asking like how I would go about like telling them, or how?
Yeah, it's more like, do you offer an exit interview? Do you kind of what are those pieces that are essential before they leave that you gain as they're heading out?
So, well, I've only ever let one person go. It was kind of, she knew it was coming. It was kind of we do a 3 strikes and you're out kind of situation. It was difficult. We're, a close kind of group of people, so it was difficult, but yeah, I mean, definitely there's meetings leading up to it. You don't want to do it, lots of talking, communication. Yeah, we do give, we did give her the opportunity to, tell families and everything that she was leaving. And so it wasn't just a kind of rip the band-aid off kind of thing, but at the same time, you don't really want to draw it out either. So that's how that went.
Okay. Natalie or Jen, do you have experience with having to let somebody go, or as someone, is taking another job or resigning, what processes do you have in place?
I had one take another job closer to her home, and for more money, and she hadn't been here that long, and so she was upset about it. But I told her that I appreciated everything that she had done for us, and that it was her time to move on and shine in another area with more children. So I helped smooth her transition to a new position that she was petrified to move into. And I've only ever had to let one go, and it was just been a little too rough with the kids. So, and she realized that, and she was fine. But I always ask, is there anything that we could do to make things better? Like when somebody leaves to go to another job.
Great, thank you. Jen, do you have anything to add?
I do the exact same thing as Melissa and Natalie. I haven't had a whole lot of experience with that yet because we just opened in November. I actually did have a lady just walk out on the job, but that was due to her personal reasoning. So there wasn't a whole lot of reason that I could do with her. We just wish them the best. I never badmouth anybody, never, even with the staff. They were all upset because starting up a childcare center takes a lot, and you have to have a very dedicated staff to do that. So they've been working really hard for me, and it was frustrating for everybody. But I find that the more positive I lead with, the more positive my team stays. And instead of going down that negativity, like negative Nancy, you just can't do that. I used to manage apartment communities. So before I even started up, I had all my forms created and ready to go. Anything I do is always in writing. I've had to do one write-up for dress, just the dress code wasn't being adhered to, and but in a really was not being adhered to. Normally it would just been like a verbal, but this was a little bit more. And then I make sure that I have my handbook, everything written out, so that exactly what I expect. I even email that to them before they accept the job. I ask them to read it over to make sure nothing. So communication is always huge with me. I put everything in writing. I document everything, because once you do the 3 strikes, you're out. In order for them not to come back and get you for unemployment, because then Indiana's a no-fault state, you really have to show that it was negligence on their part. So yeah, that's one thing I always recommend is I just document everything. You just never know.
Yes. Oh, that's so true. I'm curious on how, you said you have a handbook and some of those policies that you've created. How did you put that together? What did that take? What resources did you use?
Honestly, I took the interpretive guide for licensed centers, read all 180 pages of it, and created something that went along with my philosophy. Did a lot of soul searching. What's my philosophy? What's my goal with opening this childcare center, and how am I going to reach that? What do I need in place for my kids, for our families, for the staff? I did a lot of looking and Googling bunches of different handbooks, employees and center handbooks as well. And then I talked to, probably 50 people and asked them what was their favorite thing about their job that they liked. And I asked, what was the worst thing? The number one thing is being made to feel guilty if you have to take off. And that's a lot of single moms and parents. They face that. They go to work, they get a point if they have to take off and take their kids to the doctor. Gosh, kids get sick all the time. So I did a bunch of searching on how I could get PTO based off how many hours they actually work, how I could get an incentive for those that do work all 40 hours and do not take off, and how we can allow parents to take off and be a parent without getting taken advantage of. There's a fine line there. And just make it a place that people want to come to work at. It's just, gosh, we spend all of our waking hours together. We have to like what we're doing and who we work with.
Yes, so well. I love that. I mean, thinking about them as human beings, not just, workers. Melissa, do you have, or Natalie, do you have something to add? You're unmuted.
I did the same thing. I looked around, and I had met with another director and kind of shared her policy book with me and her handbook and stuff. So I kind of tweaked some from hers, and then I talked to our board president at the time, had her own home daycare for years. So she knew a lot of the things that needed to be in the books. So we kind of worked together on those.
Yeah, I mean, thinking about the handbook and the policies and, really working so much together with your teams, how do you create a sense of community at your business, not only with your staff, but also with families that you work with and for? Melissa, do you want to take us down this path?
Sure. So how do we create a sense of community? We opened in 2020, so it was rough because we couldn't really have gatherings. Now that we can more, well, I guess I'll just back up. And so in 2020, when we couldn't have gatherings, we used an app. Well, we still use an app, but I feel like some places don't do it, and that's fine, but it's a big part of the parents, the families that we have love it because you can see what their child is doing all day. And it's, information, what they ate and how long they slept and, diapers and potties and all that. But also just, certain ones have the access to, pretty much just text the teachers, and that's really cool too. And it was so helpful. I think probably 80% of the tours that I did before we were actually letting people come in the facility, I feel like we use Brightwheel. I feel like Brightwheel was a big part of them saying, oh yeah, I think we do want to come here because, I can't imagine taking my child somewhere that I had never really, really been to and seen how it was ran. And, we did tours, but they were short and sweet and you couldn't really communicate with the teacher. And so, I think that was a really big part of it. Now that we can have gatherings, we do have those. We also had a little space outside where you open the door and there's a little opening, and that's where the parents would wait for their children. So we would put communication out there and artwork and things like that, so they could see a little bit before they could come in. But now that we are, allowing people to come in, we still use the Bright Wheel a lot for communication, just so everybody knows what's going on. We do newsletters on there, so that's a big part of it. But also just now it's great having people come in and, seeing teachers, and they don't hang around a long time or anything like that, but it's nice to be able to do that. We're about to have our pre-K graduation. There's going to be so many, so many families so we're not even having it at our center. We rented a place and we're having it somewhere else. And so I think people are just really happy to be able to go to things like that again. So there's tons of people coming, but that's okay. As far as we have a community helper week, so we ask parents, or if anybody knows anything, anybody can't speak, anybody in any position that would want to come share with the children. We have that too. What else? I don't know. I can't think of anything else, but yeah, we have Halloween thing, like a trunk or treat. Anytime you can get involved in the community, it's fun. The kids love it, and just helps get your name out there too.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything to add, Natalie or Jen? How do you create a sense of community?
Yeah, I agree with Melissa. Just communication, lots and lots of communication, making sure your teachers are in constant contact with families. And then as a director, sitting there and making sure that you're in contact and letting them know that the teacher's talking to you as well. I think it's important that the director knows what the staff knows, and that the family realizes, okay, wait a minute, they're all talking. My teachers, when they're kiddos are getting ready to move up to the next classroom, those two teachers are talking. They have a file that's been tracking their development that goes up with them. We have an app as well. There's lots of different apps out there, so I think that's a real good thing to research and see which one's best for what you want to do. And then letting the parents know daily what's going on. That I agree with Melissa. That has been huge. Parents really appreciate that. And then community wise, every quarter we do something for the community. So we've my in-home program in Greenwood, I've done that a lot. We've collected cake pans and cake mixes and Mother Day cards and dropped them off at the food pantry so that families could come pick up a little cake kit to give to moms. We've done lots of food drives. We've collected pencils and other types of school materials to send to Africa. So we've always act locally and think globally as well. And the property in Mooresville, we've dropped off thank you cards and donuts for our local police department. We're getting ready to put out a children's lending library. I'm super excited about that. My husband just put it together. So we're going to put that out front so the kids, and we're across the street from a park, they can come, need to go. But yeah, definitely getting out there and everyone know you're part of the community. You're not just there taking care of kiddos. Actively a community member wanting to make your community better.
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much. That's awesome. I mean, I think there's a lot of ways to build a sense of community inside your four walls, and then how to, take your families out into the community and meet collectively outside of that. And I love the word of mouth and the relationship building just through those community events. What are some relationships that have been sort of invaluable to you as you've grown and really found your place doing this work in your community? What are some of those relationships? Natalie, you want to? Uh-oh, you have a thinking face, maybe.
I'm thinking. with COVID, I would say the best relationship that I have because of COVID is a director's cohort that we were all together before COVID, and we kind of worked through it through COVID, and we still get together and we can bounce ideas and vent to each other. You know, it's just a place where we're free to be who we want to be and say what we want to say. What happens in the meeting stays in the meeting, that kind of thing. As far as community, I just try to stay involved as much as I can, and I build relationships with the families. I've been here 6 to 6 pretty much since we reopened after COVID. I enjoy meeting the kids in the morning and talking to the parents at the end of the night. So that's what I do.
So that director cohort, is that just a group of, who is that group and who leads that?
Gosh, it was started with the CCR&Rs. We have some from Decatur, clear to Kokomo, clear up to, I think the ones from Manchester. We just kind of meet somewhere locally. We've been meeting in Marion.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
But we're always open to new members too, so.
Melissa, do you want to add to that?
Cohorts are amazing. I was also involved in some
Great.
put on by the Resource Network. Jane, who's on here, she is a big help to me. She's I've known her. She was my director when I worked at Purdue at a childcare, and I've known her since then, and she has just been very, very helpful in everything that I've done. So, and anytime I have a question, I usually ask her. So yeah, I mean, it's great, just to meet people. I know more people now than I've ever known. So it is really good. But yeah, it's really great. I like talking to the parents as well. It's really nice that they know, I'm sure they feel more comfortable that they know me, and it's nice getting to know them, and yeah.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Jane, too, for linking us up with Melissa. And a plug to your CCR&Rs. If you are thinking about opening a business or have any questions, along this journey, we will have a slide that has contact information as well for your local CCR&R. So kind of moving on or into learning from you all about what made you transition from having a family childcare to opening a center. Why, how long did it take? And what were some questions that you had to, ask yourself and figure out if that was the right move for you? This would be Jen and Melissa.
Okay, I'll go first. So obviously the need was, you can only have a certain amount in a home. So, and the need just kept growing. So, that's what made me want to open a center. Sorry, what was the other part of the question?
Yeah, just the why behind it, and what were the questions you had to ask yourself in order to ensure that that was the right move?
Okay. So, there's so much that goes into it. Either way, opening home or center is huge. Obviously, the place where you're going to have it is, if you're opening a center, that's a really big question. If there's a need, but I don't know anywhere that there's not a need. So just, how you're going to the licensing process for the center. I started, as far as sending in the paperwork, I think they want you to start there's a lot. I mean, it depends on if you're going into a center that's already there, or if you're having to build out, things like that. But you don't, it's like there's a kind of a sweet spot, because you don't want to send it too soon, because once they receive it, you have a year to before licensing has to come back. So once you get licensed, you don't want to send it too soon, but then you want to make sure kind of you have it there, because it is a lot of paperwork. So you kind of want to make sure that it's ready to go. Having someone to, ask questions, that's really helpful. That can help you. I mean, you can always email Natalie, but she has a lot to do. So it's, it's nice to have someone that you can just call and say, hey, what's this part? What does this mean? Because it can be confusing, but if you just kind of take it, one step at a time. I would say to start your paperwork, I would give yourself a year, just to make sure that you can a year from when you want to be open, just to make sure you have all your ducks in a row, because it's really nice now that your background checks are not taking as long as they used to. That's great. Because that was a big stressful part of it before, but now it's about a week turnaround, so that's not so bad anymore. But yeah, the paperwork it's big, so you just want to make sure that you have time and do it right.
Great, thank you. Jen, anything to add there?
I agree. I can't really add much to what Melissa said. It's time. And when you think you have enough time, you should probably add another 60 days. Because that's kind of what we ran into. Another 60 days and another $2,000 just automatically that setback. Because we thought we were ready to go, and then they said, no, you need a fence here, and that ended up being $1,500. I'm like, oh my Lanta. So yeah, and knowing that things are not going to go smooth, it's hard, but it's worth it. It's totally worth it. And have a contingency plan and having a backup plan to that plan, and then probably a third backup plan would be helpful. Just because things change, and especially in the world of COVID, like, man, it can get a little crazy sometimes. But yeah, and then finding someone that you can ask your questions to. So I emailed my licensing rep, who then quit, and we got another licensing rep, and asked her questions. They're great. They will refer you to the handbook, to the interpretive guide. So read the interpretive guide. It will be your friend. I actually still keep it pulled up on my computer. And if you do it through the little, I think it's Microsoft Edge, you can search a word and it'll pull up all the words in the document, and you can kind of hunt that way. That is your friend. The interpretive guide is your friend. And then getting in touch with your local CCNR. I have had amazing people help me along the way. They have truly. It does take a community. You're not alone. You probably can't do it on your own. It's nice to have someone there that you can ask questions or help, or just kind of be on your team. Have a group that can lead you. If you go to Past Equality, you're gonna need a team anyway. You have to have a board that you can meet with and help you make decisions once you get on Past Equality. So having a group of people that you can rely on and ask your questions. Find a nurse, find a doctor for your health program. Get ready to learn all about nutrition and the venues and getting that set up. If you go step by step and take one step at a time, don't get bogged down by the overall process. Because once you're done with it, what you're going to do is some pretty amazing work. And those kiddos, and when you see what they're doing and what they're learning and the families you're helping, it's going to make the hard work all pay off.
So when you're going through this process and you need a pep talk, you're going to need to call Jen, obviously. That is great advice. And you kind of are steering us in this direction, but and mentioned Past Equality. Can you talk a little bit about what the benefits of Past Equality have been, and not only for your business, but for families you serve?
So we market Past Equality big time. I think that licensed care is really I have a feeling that's getting really pushed, especially with the school starting to absorb pre-K. You're going to want to show that you're not just babysitting kids, that you are teaching. You have that teaching element in there, that you are supporting your community, you're supporting your family, you're supporting your staff. Some of the things that
Path to Quality requires that you're allowing your teachers to go have plan time, and they should get plan time away from kids. Like that, not only is that helping your class, helping the kids be able to learn, it's giving your teachers a break to be able to think and plan these amazing lesson plans. And it's showing that you're not only caring about the children, but you're caring about your staff as well. You want what's best for them. You want them to thrive in what they're doing, and you're going to support them. Path to Quality, they have incentives that once you level up, you get rewards. It's fun to shop. It's like, I can't even remember now. I think it's $500 for level 2. So it's not like earth shattering, but it is fun to go let your teacher, hey, this is your one, what element would you like new for your classroom? Get them involved as well, because that's everybody wants a say in what's going on at their place of employment. But selling that PTQ to the community, and with Mooresville, we've had to teach them, the education gap starts at 18 months, guys. 18 months. We have got to be educating these little guys. We have to give them the vocabulary, or how are they going to read it when they get to kindergarten if they haven't heard the words, and just letting them know that you're serious about education. You're not just sitting, we're not a babysitter, and we don't sit on kids. We are educating these kids, and pushing past the quality. That's the way to let them know that, hey, I'm serious, and we're all about education. We're not just here to watch your kids while you go to work.
Yes, thank you, Jen. So we have done, a few learning communities. One of our previous ones, we did touch on some PTQ. So when we do send the recording out of this session, we'll also provide some other links that you can reference to kind of dig a little bit deeper into some of, PTQ and licensing as well. So we have about 15 minutes left, and I wanted to dive a little bit into funding. And I'm curious on what types of startup funding did you receive, if any? Were there any grant programs that you applied for? Kind of give our folks on the call today just a sense of what that startup funding you either received or didn't. Natalie, do you want to kick us off?
I didn't really have a startup per se. We did go to our community foundation. We needed an updated playground. Ours had been here for I don't know how long, and that was one of the main things that we needed to do, was to update our playground. So we went to our community foundation and got some funding through them. The other funding that I've gotten has just been what's come down through the state, but I just reach out to whoever I can come up with, or I ask around to see if there's anything out there.
Okay, thank you. Melissa, what about you?
So one of the only good things about opening in 2020, the Come Back Stronger grant. So I used that because I did have the 2 homes. So I did use that as a home, and then later on as a center. So we did use that. It's the only one we got, but it was very helpful. Just that little bit, not really little, but it was, a cushion to help, just so we could, and we're actually doing more with our playground now too. We just did, what we could when we opened, and now that there's still some grants out, well, there were, and grants out there, and just, we're just adding on to it. So that's really nice to be able to do that for our families and our children. But yeah, that was one of the only good things about opening in 2020, because it was very scary to open in August of 2020, because it was kind of right in the middle of the pandemic. So yeah.
All or nothing at that point, right?
Yeah.
All or nothing. Jen, what about you?
We actually sold our home in 2020 and used the funding from that sale to start up our childcare center. But we found a building that was already existing and just had sat vacant for 4 years, but it had been a childcare center for like 30 years before the raccoons lived in it for a while. But yeah, we did the same. We took care of this. We took advantage of the same grants, the Come Back Stronger. There was one that was closing the gap. I don't know if that's still going, but if you're starting up in a place that needs quality childcare, which, gosh, I think I heard that like 60% of Indiana childcare is closed since 2020 till today due to the pandemic. But if you're in an area that's desperately needed, I would definitely reach out to the CCNR. I was in a cohort group as well for Morgan County, because Morgan County they just don't have very many options for good, high quality childcare. And through there, we ended up getting like a $50,000 grant. I did the same thing as Natalie and Melissa that went to my playground, because we had a slide that's been in there since I think the 1960s. I'm not sure. It has to come out. But yeah, it's any grant. And as you're starting up and you start looking at how you're going to organize your business, we're honestly thinking about reorganizing as a not-for-profit, just because as a not-for-profit, that's going to open up a lot more grants. If you decide not to, if you reach out to United Way, they can apply for you for some of these grants because they're not for profit, and then you can get the money that way. But I would probably volunteer. I know I would get in good with. That's just how I am before you start asking for money. But yeah, and let them have something planned in place of this is what I'm going to provide for my community. Have a presentation ready to go. But that's funding wise. That was pretty much what got us going and up and running. Was those pretty nice grants that came through.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. So I want to ask each of you to think about what advice you would give to emerging providers. I know that we've thrown a lot of things out here today. What are kind of those first steps you would suggest these folks take? What's some advice we can leave our friends with today? Natalie, you want to start us off?
I would say that if you're going to become licensed, to find out who your licensing consultant is, and again, meet with them, and they'll steer you where you need to go. They'll answer any question you need answered. They're scary at times, but they're wonderful as well. And just breathe. Take your time.
Thank you, Natalie. Melissa, what about you?
So the orientation class you have to do to open, it is, I forget how many hours, maybe five, something like that, 5-6 hours. I think you have to do it in person. I did it in person, and it is very helpful. It's a lot of information, but you take all the paperwork with you, and that's where you get the paperwork to become a licensed center. They go step by step. They even give you a timeline, and they give you really important phone numbers as well. So that's nice, and emails. But yeah, that's is the first step I would. It's also it's good to know, kind of at least have an idea where your center or home is going to be. Well, if you're doing orientation to a center, where it's going to be, because they have specific, just different kind of guidelines, depending on your building and things like that. But that's definitely a good place to start.
Great. And Robin had mentioned that the license orientations are now offered online. So they are shorter, and you do, receive all of the information and resources through that online portal as well. Jen, what about you? What's some advice?
I have two. Number one, to sit down with a budget. You call everyone around you and see how much they're charging, so you know what to charge and how much you can charge your teachers. If your competition is charging $13 an hour, you ought to raise that up to at least $15. The cost of living is expensive. See what you can do to be at the top. Figure out your budget. Make sure that you can make it work before you get into a situation where you can't make it work and you've wasted your time and a lot of money, because that's heartbreaking, especially if families have to relocate after only being with you for a short time. The other one is, I'm going to push that interpretive guide and just read it, and then read it again and keep it handy, because that's going to tell you your day-to-day operations, what you can and cannot do. It just, I cannot push that interpretive guide enough. That I can't tell you how many times that has gotten me. Of course, my licensing agent refers me back to it, so I've gotten quite used to looking it up. But yeah, that would be my 2 thing. Hit that budget, make sure you know exactly what you're getting into and can afford it, especially if you're doing any type of remodeling to open up, because there will be inevitably something that pops up at the end that you think you're ready to go, even as you go through the checklist. And it could be something, it's called an interpretive guide for a reason. There are some things that's left up into interpretation, and some licensing agencies, they or agents see it differently than others. Not bad mouthing them, because I've had really, really amazing luck. I've had 2 different licensing agents, and they've been wonderful. And they really are truly there to help you and to make you be the best that you possibly can be. My licensing agency just told me there was something with her. I was like, man, this is like a crazy rule. This is a crazy rule. And she said, you are a center. You are the best of the best, and I expect a lot out of you. It's like, I see where you're coming from. But yeah, the interpretive guide and then hitting that budget, that would be my 2 things of advice.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you, Jen. We did a learning community focused on sort of financial management 101, and I know Spark is a great resource as well around that. And we will share that link to that presentation that we did in April. And in ILP, in this for the learning community, you can access some budgets that you can play around with. You can, use. You can figure out your tuition through these budgets. I think it would be really helpful for you to download and just, review. Kind of, you don't have to fill every single line item out, just like your home budget, but it's good to know what could come, what you could budget for in the future as well. So thanks for bringing that up, Jen. We do have one question that came in, and I don't know, I want to open it up to, because I know there are CCRNRs that program engagement specialists on here, as well as Zoe Kossel. So I know there's a lot of experts in the room with us today. But Uma had asked, so unlicensed home childcare without CCDF. So she's asking, can you talk a little bit about how to get started, as there's no policy around this? And does it need, do they need a business permit or registration to operate an unlicensed home childcare without CCDF? And I know Trisha is on, who is newer role, but she is your contact in Bartholomew County. But I don't want to put Trisha on the spot. So anyone like to comment or answer Uma's question today?
I can take it. Can you repeat it one more time for me to make sure I don't miss anything?
Yeah, absolutely. So she is referencing an unlicensed home childcare without CCDF. So she wants to learn a little bit about how to get started, because she believes that there's no policy around this. And, is there a business permit or registration? Kind of what are those first steps?
It would depend on where you are located, what your next steps would be. For one, if you were doing the unlicensed, the legally licensed exempt program in your home, then you don't have to worry about the location. As far as a business, the not CCDF is what stumped me, because I don't want to, it's too easy to say, and I'll be honest, it's too easy to say that since you're not doing CCDF, that you don't have any regulations. And so you're not necessarily required to provide the business permit, because you don't have a consultant to provide that information to. And anyone feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but when you take CCDF away, then you take away a consultant that you would turn in your business permit to, that you would submit your application to. So when you take CCDF away, there's no one that you would have to submit that information to. You're kind of, in the state's eyes, babysitting, for lack of better words. It's not until you decide to accept CCDF that there's some regulations in place. And so then you would indeed have an inspection and have an application that you would need to submit with corresponding documentation. Feel free to back me up, program engagement specialist, if I'm off track, but that's what I'm feeling is the answer.
Michelle, I think you're spot on. I would completely agree with you. If you have 5 or fewer children in your home and you're not wanting to accept those CCDF vouchers, there really aren't any regulations in Indiana. What you really kind of get started though, Uma, is take those orientations if you haven't done. So start off with orientation 1. It really gives you the basics of the different kinds of child cares. And then you can move on to orientation 2. And that breaks it down to your different types of child cares that, what you want to move forward to. If you want to be a home child care, if you want to work in a center, or if you want to do any of the legally licensed exempt kinds of things or ministry. So I'll put my email in the chat box, and just reach out to me whenever you get a chance. Shoot me a real quick email and I'll remember exactly who you are, and I'll send you some of that first initial kind of stuff you can get started. And it's all free. Those orientations are free. And it really just gives you a better understanding of what you're able to do if you want to do more.
Hi, Krisha.
Thank you.
Thanks for that. And we have completed orientation 1 and 2.
Okay.
And until we are getting licensed, we're planning to do with 5 or fewer children. So in that interim term, can we operate with 5 or lesser children, or should we get any business permit until then?
My understanding, you don't need a business permit. Nope. You're just in the state of Indiana, you can do that, 5 or fewer.
Okay. So we can charge them and pay the taxes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You just can't accept the CCDF vouchers.
Got it.
Okay. Can you share can you share any software to maintain the bookmarks and to maintain the fees and taxes?
That is a good question. I don't know that right off the top of hand. One of these other people on here that actually run their own child cares probably can answer that better than I can.
And
I would say QuickBooks. QuickBooks is really easy to use. It's user friendly, and they have an app now, so you can either do it online or on your computer or an app. And real quick about the not having a business permit, I would check with your city what they require, because you're going to be a business, even though you're unlicensed and you're paying taxes, you're still considered a business within your city. And I can tell you from experience, when I had my own home in Greenwood, I'm up in Johnson County, so I'm just north of you guys. I had a neighbor that moved in that bought a house after us, and they had a problem that they were living by a child care center, even though they knew it when they bought the house. And they tried to shut us down. And the only thing that saved us was that we were licensed, and that the state license oversaw any city ordinance. So keep that in mind as you're going forward. But yeah, if you're going to pay taxes, you're considered a business. And I would make sure I was protected. I wouldn't want to start a business up and then have a neighbor complain and you just have to close her back down.
Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Thank you.
Oh, great. Thank you all so much. This is the power of the learning community, right? To pop in here and get the information that you're looking for. So thanks for chiming in, Michelle and Trisha and Jen, with your experience. So I'm going to shift just to a couple slides. So we'll close out here. And of course, the recording and everything will be sent to you via email, and some of the references with the other recordings will be included as well. So just quickly wanted to share here our local connections. So again, we keep referencing the Child Care Resource and Referral Network. This is the map. So there's 5 regions. So, Bartholomew County, that's why Trisha chimed in and said, hey, give me your email or I'll send you mine and you'll get connected. And so each of these regions has dedicated program engagement specialists. They have community engagement specialists, family engagement specialists to support your communities and to help you open a successful childcare business. So you can check out them online. You can give them a call. They also have local learning communities, as well as the cohorts we mentioned earlier. And you can join those and learn from your peers that are kind of in the same place as you are as well. And then, get connected with your local CCR&R. We will continue to, build out this learning community in terms of resources and opportunities to connect And then the resource library in Indiana Learning Paths, which you will be invited to, has tons of resources that we mentioned today, like the interpretive guide and different budgets that might help you prepare as you think about opening your own business. And then lastly, this is just my email. Again, I'm Kelsey Webb. I don't even know if I introduced myself. So I'm with Early Learning Indiana and work with the CCR&Rs and supporting them, really supporting families and communities across the state. So feel free to reach out to me. Some of the follow-up emails will be from me as well. So wanted to say a big thanks to our providers that not only for the time to prep today, but then for your time and expertise and all that you're doing for families in our state. So it was a pleasure to be with you this evening. Thank you all for being here, and we hope to continue to connect, certainly. So take care. Good night, guys.